And so here's a story about an accountant. It can be you if you're an accountant right now, an accountant and accountant's best client, who we're going to refer to as Scott. Okay, Scott's been the accountant's client for 15 years. Business has been growing steady. Scott's in his mid 50s. He's finally starting to think about, what does this thing look like? How much longer do I want to run at this speed? And in somewhat of an anticipation for ultimately slowing down, retiring, the next chapter of life, Scott finds a business partner who we're going to refer to as Sarah. Sarah brings in some new energy, some new ideas, and some great contacts. And so it turns out to be a really good strategic move. Within a matter of months, they've significantly increased the revenue of their company, so much so that Scott and Sarah both end up deciding to increase their take-home income from about $300,000 a year to $600,000 a year. Significant jump, right? And so Scott's pretty excited about this. And then he starts thinking, you know what? That's going to probably have a fairly significant impact on my taxes. And as Scott's accountant, he reaches out to you, Scott's go-to person. He explains the situation a little bit about the business and going from 300,000 to 600,000. And based on the conversation, you say, you know, what I think you should probably do is reach out to a individual named Matt at Defined Benefit Plans R Us. Matt does a good job. I've sent him clients in the past, and I think a defined benefit plan might end up helping you save some money in taxes. So Scott's kind of, a little hesitant. I mean, none of us really like meeting new people for the first time and disclosing a little bit of personal information, but you're his go-to person. So he listens to you and he reaches out to Matt. And sure enough, Matt does a fine job. Like, he analyzes the situation, talks to Scott, and Scott decides to move forward. So based on Scott's age and income, he makes a fairly significant contribution. He ends up saving about $50,000 in taxes, right? So good deal. Scott was concerned about taxes, made a contribution to this defined benefit plan that Matt set up, and then everyone appears to be happy. But the story doesn't really stop there. So we take a step back and we dig a little bit deeper. Scott, a couple months later, is then at the opening game for the local NFL team. And he rented a suite with a handful of friends. Around halftime, the topic of business comes up, as it normally does. And these are all the types of individuals that you would love to have an opportunity to work with, right? Successful business owners, a lot of moving pieces, and opportunity to bring true value to these individuals. And so it comes around to Scott's discussion. He says, you know what, guys, business is booming. Like, things are really good. I think I mentioned this to some of you, but I decided to bring in a business partner, 50% partner, Sarah. She's phenomenal. She's helped bring in a bunch of new clients, and in fact, decided to take our personal income from about 300,000 a year to 600,000 a year. They're like, hey man, nice job. That's exciting stuff. He says, yeah, I was actually a little concerned about the tax ramifications of doubling my income. So I reached out to my accountant, and my accountant told me about this thing. I think it's called a defined benefit plan. But anyways, he introduced me to this guy named Matt. I contacted him and ended up putting this defined benefit plan in place. And it saved me 50 grand in taxes. And so the friends kind of are looking around, and one of them says, that's interesting. I think I've heard that term before, like defined benefit, but I wonder if that would work for me. Would you mind sharing Matt's name and phone number? Scott says, yeah, no, sure, no problem. No problem. I'll text it to you right now. And at this opportunity, or at this situation, all of a sudden, here is Scott, one of your best clients, right? Speaking with other successful business owners. He has an opportunity to tell your story, but because of the model you're using, he's actually telling Matt's story instead. So let's analyze first from Scott's perspective. How good was this idea of a defined benefit plan? And then we'll take a look at it from a business perspective or business model from your perspective and figure out how good was that. So the defined benefit plan, no problem. But I did mention that Sarah now owns 50% of the company. Did the accountant or Matt ask about a buy-sell agreement? I mean, God forbid something happens to Sarah when then she's driving to the office next week, or to your client, Scott. What happens to the other 50% of the equity? And we know that Scott wants to retire in 5 to 7 years, but like, is that realistic? I mean, what does that actually look like? It's great that we have a defined benefit plan in place, but what's the retirement look like? And then we've got employee retention. Many of you know this from either growing your own companies or working with business owners, but you bring in a new partner, you bring in all types of new clients, employees feel lost, and the owners end up becoming professional plate spinners. So we have employee issues, we have owner plate spinning issues, and then finally the qualified plan. Sure, it might have been a great solution, but his income went from 300,000 to 600,000, like double. Does he really need all of that to live off of, or should we also have considered maybe a non-qualified plan in addition to the defined benefit? So that's Scott's situation and some interesting questions that really haven't been addressed. But what about your situation, right? You lost a massive opportunity to have one of your best clients telling your story to the other clients that you would like to work with, i.e. organic growth, because of the outdated referral model that you're using. So you see this model on the right-hand side. There's the accountant obviously in the center. There's the clients on the far right. So typically accountants will say anywhere 200, 400, 600 plus clients. And if we're talking about a firm, it might be 1,000 plus clients that accountants have, all with their own goals and concerns and needs. And then you have how many Matts, right? I mean, how many relationships with people like a Matt, a relatively loose third-party referral relationship? Maybe you met at a networking event or you went to school with, or somebody else referred you to. You got somebody that's going to help with qualified plan, Social Security, employee retention, business valuation, tax credits, life insurance, probably cost segregation, estate planning, and in essence, you end up juggling hundreds of conversations at any given time. And so it's no wonder that one of accountants' biggest issues and concerns is time. Like, look at the model that's being used. Where is the leverage? It is flawed. It's a flawed model from the beginning. All right, I see 500 clients, 350 clients. Mike says 1,500 clients, 2,500 clients, 100 business, and 1,500 personal. That's more kind of what I was expecting, a big range there. So an incredibly unleveraged model. So let me just throw another option for you. And many of you are familiar with this, but I want to kind of just break it down, I think, in very simple terms. A new model, rather than the outdated referral model, a team-based model, okay? So you have the same client, Scott, who's reaching out to you, but rather than you trying to be the Michael Jordan, like with all of these variables around you, but you're a solo person on the court, you're now a team, a proactive planning team. It doesn't matter how good Michael Jordan is, a team of professional players is always going to beat one superstar. So now your client reaches out to you. You are part of a proactive planning team. For the accountants on the line, you are likely invited to this by a financial advisor. That's one person on your team. You likely also have some staff or some junior accountants. You also should develop some local relationships, like just a good business attorney, maybe a good business broker, local relationships on your local team. And then you plug into a virtual family office. And we have been developing since 2009 relationships with specialists, okay? Typically, when you think about a mass affluent or an affluent client's problems, their problems, their concerns, their goals are going to fall into one of 5 categories. First of all, you have tax planning. Like most of us think right away, tax returns, audits, bookkeeping, but also proactive tax planning, right? Income tax mitigation, estate tax mitigation, capital gains. So that's one bubble. Then you have insurance. That could be life insurance. That could be property and casualty. That could be captive insurance, the risk mitigation. Then you have wealth management, financial planning, college planning, insurance or investment accounts. You have legal services like buy-sell agreements, estate plans, entity selection. And then finally, you have business advisory services. That's sitting down with people like Scott and advising them on their baby, their business. 15 years Scott's put in blood, sweat, and tears into that company. So it's things like understanding what are your key performance indicators, how to watch those and manage those. It's understanding things like, where are you taking this company? What's your employee culture? What are your leadership skills? Those are business advisory services, okay? So you and your local team plug into a virtual family office specialist made up of all 5 of those areas and come together to serve Scott, your client. Now, let's play through the same scenario. And by the way, ideally, you're not waiting for Scott to call you, but rather you're plugging into either our software or our communication to be meeting with Scott quarterly. So you're ahead of this conversation. But let's just say somehow it slips by you. Scott calls you, you answer the phone, and Scott says, business is booming. My income's going from 300 to 600,000. Should I be concerned with tax planning? And you say, I'm glad you called. I'll tell you what, let me sit down with me and my team. Give us a couple weeks to come up with a few ideas. Then I'll circle back with you and let you know a few of the things that we've come up with. Between now and then, I'm probably going to want some additional information. So over the next few days, I'll be in touch just to gather some more details. Then you go to work with your team. But it's not just Matt, who you happened to sit down with 2 years ago at a networking event. It's a team built of world-class experts working on your behalf, right? Working on your behalf in all 5 of those areas: the tax planning, the risk mitigation or the insurance, the wealth management, the tax planning, the business advisory services. And then we come back to you, and I say we as in the team comes back to you and says, hey, that idea of the defined benefit plan, actually it is appropriate. I think it works well here. But in addition to that qualified plan, we would also suggest a non-qualified plan. So we're still capturing the deductions from the qualified plan, but we are looking at tax-free distributions down the road from a non-qualified plan as well. Now, we know that Scott owns the building where they run the company, and we noticed that we've never done a cost segregation study before. So what we'd suggest we look at doing a cost seg study, and we could actually use that cost seg study to fund the non-qualified plan, or to also fund the buy-sell agreement, which is something we definitely suggest is done here, because with him and Sarah owning the company 50-50, if something happened to either of them, the employees, and it'd just be a mess. So we need a buy-sell agreement. Here's how we would suggest funding that. Additionally, as the company's growing and we're looking at succession planning, we should really invest a little bit of time and energy into some leadership coaching, right? Here's who we would suggest Scott works with in that regard. And last but not least, as we were doing the more comprehensive financial review of his situation, we saw that he only has term insurance, both him and his wife, and it expires in about 4 years. And with 3 kids and I think a potential grandkid on the way, if I heard that right, we really should probably look at some permanent insurance as well. And here's how we would suggest funding that. So now we sit down and we start pulling apart the suggestions, and we look at every suggestion. Every tool has a pro and a con. So we look at the benefit, we look at the cost, we run some stress tests, we look at some initial analysis to discuss what the costs of that might be for Scott. By the way, you've already been introduced to many of these specialists through the Elite Growth Academy or through educational webinars that we host once a month. And you get to the point where, yeah, you're comfortable with this idea. So you call up Scott, schedule a meeting, either in person or on Zoom, between you, Scott, and your team. That could either be your local team, who we spoke about, or you could invite one of the specialists from the virtual family office to attend as well. You go through the information, and Scott is literally blown away by the amount of work and preparation that was done for this meeting. And just like before with Matt, he decides to move forward, but this time in a little bit more of a comprehensive environment. So let's pause there. Now we go back to that football game story, right? Halftime, conversation of business comes up, but when it gets to Scott, he goes, man, it's been a wild few months. I mean, business is booming. Took a personal income from 300,000 to 600,000. Was a little concerned with the taxes, so I reached out to my accountant. My accountant has this proactive planning team, and not only looked at my tax liability and came up with something that is going to save me about 50 grand in taxes there, but also started helping me really understand, what is retirement going to look like? Like, when can I do it? How much can I anticipate? How long would I have access to that money? and then helped me get my business like on a whole new level. I mean, first of all, we put in place this thing called a buy-sell agreement in case something happens to me or Sarah, my new business partner. And we started doing some leadership coaching where I'm actually defining like, what is the culture? Like, what's the mission? The employees are way more excited about what we're doing here. It's this whole thing is just really exciting. And now his friends are not only high-fiving Scott, but like, tell me more about this. So you're saving money in taxes. You got your future more clearly defined. You got your business on a better footing. Like, who did this? Your accountant? Honestly, I'm lucky if I get a phone call or an email back from my accountant, like in a week of me reaching out, let alone discussing any types of ideas like this with me. Like, this is interesting. Could you share your accountant's contact information with me? And just like that, real organic growth starts to happen with the exact types of clients that the accountant wants to be working with. So let's compare these two models, right? You have the outdated third-party referral model where there is unnecessary referral risk. Like, as soon as we give that name and phone number of Matt to our clients, we kind of lose control of what's going on. We also put the client in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. Like, nobody loves meeting somebody new and talking about personal information right out the gate. Produces mediocre results, even if Matt is great at what they do. Like, let's say you did a background check and you've got an agreement with Matt and you've thoroughly interviewed defined benefit specialists, and Matt's one of the best at what he does. He's still only one person that can never compete with the team of top professionals. And then from your perspective, it lacks organic growth. Even if everything goes well, Scott is still telling Matt's story. So the team-based model eliminates the referral risk, allows your client to stay more comfortable working with you, someone they already know and trust as their go-to person, right? Produces world-class results, because that's the whole purpose of the work we do behind the scenes, is to find the best team for the advisors and accountants in this community to plug into. And then it develops true organic growth, because now Scott or Sarah or any other client in that situation has a truly unique story to tell. Gain a deeper level of trust with clients, provide more value to clients and to the community, increase your financial success, because when you bring more value, you earn more revenue. Enjoy a greater quality of life and less time in the office, because you're actually utilizing leverage. Like, you're using other people's time and other people's skill set. Have less stress, because I'll tell you what, doing tax returns and compliance-based work, most CPAs I speak to say something like, I'd be happy if I honestly never did another tax return in my life. You know what's way more fun than doing tax returns? Solving problems. Like, coming up with great solutions to complex problems. And then more time with friends and family, because not only do we help you deliver more value, but what we will also do is strategically plan out ways to start focusing more on the A and the B clients and shifting the work away from the C and the D and the F clients. That could be through actually segmenting your client base and selling off that portion. We work with a broker that specializes in that. Or it could be with hiring junior accountants to work with the C and the D clients. It could be just with raising prices until those clients naturally leave. It could be with outsourcing through either domestic or international preparers. There's a lot of ways that we can free up time. But when we deliver more value, we can charge more. We can let go of the lower end, less profitable clients, and we can spend more time with friends and family.